Hi there guys, and welcome to another version of Hope Daily. Today is Monday, very rainy day outside, and today we are going to be looking at 2 Samuel chapter 5. So if you've been following along with our Hope Dailies recently, you'll know that at the start of 2 Samuel, Saul is dead, so the old king Saul is dead from the end of 1 Samuel, and now David is kind of like setting up his reign over Judah first. And then now it's going to be a king over Israel. And I've entitled this passage, Long Live the King, because this is where David now becomes king over all of Israel, not just of Judah. It's where his rule becomes firmly established. So let's get into the passage. Let me know if you're watching, say hi, comment along, let me know your thoughts and reflections on the passage if you're watching now or if you're watching back later, and say hi, and yeah, let's get to it. So in 2 Samuel chapter 5, so first of all, I'm not going to read it all because it's quite a long passage, but I'll summarize it. So first of all, David becomes king over all of Israel. So the leaders of Israel come to him and they say, "We are your own flesh and blood. In the past, while Saul was king over us, you were the one who led Israel on their military campaigns. And the Lord said to you, you will shepherd my people, Israel, and you will become their ruler." So, like years and years ago, David had already been appointed by God to be king over Israel. Hey, Annette, good morning to you too. So then when all the elders of Israel had come to King David at Hebron, the king made a compact with them, so sort of like an agreement or a covenant at Hebron before the Lord, and they anointed David king over Israel. So now he's both king over Judah and Israel, so all together. David was 30 years old, so quite a young guy really when he became king. I'm 30 myself. He reigned over Judah 7 years and 6 months, and in Jerusalem he reigned over all Israel and Judah 33 years. So now his kingship has been firmly established. Morning Byron as well, over all of Judah and Israel. He's kind of done it in stages. So he's kind of like, he was first appointed as king by Samuel years and years ago. In 1 Samuel, at the start of 1 Samuel, and then Judah appoints him as king over them, and then now he's king over all of Israel. So it just reminds us about Jesus kind of setting up his kingdom. Jesus one day reigning over all the earth, reigning over all peoples, not just us right now for the church, but that his reign and his rule will be established over all the world. Just as like David's rule would be established over all the land. So we look forward to the day where Christ's rule, where he will be the one God and the one king over the entire land. And then we have David conquering Jerusalem. So the king and his men marched to Jerusalem to attack the Jebusites who lived there. The Jebusites said to David, "You will not get in here, so even the blind and the lame can ward you off." They thought, "David cannot get in here." Nevertheless, David captured the fortress of Zion, the city of David. So effectively, Jerusalem was still inhabited by people that were not the Israelites. They were Jebusites, so they were a foreign people that was still living in the land at the time. And so now David goes to capture the royal city, like the main city where. Almost like the epicenter of the country. He goes to take the capital back, effectively, to establish his rule and reign. And then we have like Hiram, the king of Tyre, sending like cedar logs, and he builds a palace for David, and all sorts. So a great deal of favor, a great deal of protection, and a great deal of blessing for David. So it's like, this is like the high point. It's like his rule has just been established, and he's like at the high point of his rule, really. And then we have this kind of battle with the Philistines. So it says, when the Philistines heard that David had been anointed king of Israel, they went up in full force to search for him. But David heard about it and went down to the stronghold. Now the Philistines had come and spread out in the valley of Rephaim. So David inquired of the Lord, "Shall I go and attack the Philistines? Will you hand them over to me?" So David doesn't just act first. He doesn't just go off impulses. He goes to seek God. He goes to seek the Lord and to ask, what should I do? He's sensitive to God. He wants to do what's right before God. He wants to walk rightly before him. He doesn't act rashly. He doesn't act out of his own strength and out of his own wisdom. He says, "Hey God, what should I do?" And then the Lord answered him, Go, for I will surely hand the Philistines over to you. So David went to Baal Perazim, and there he defeated them. He said, as waters break out, the Lord has broken out against my enemies before me. So that place was called Baal Perazim. The Philistines abandoned their idols there, and David and his men carried them off. So, that he has a great victory. But then the same thing happens again. So once more, the Philistines came up and spread out in the valley of Rephaim. So the same people, the Philistines, the same valley, they come up and do it again. So they come up and have another go. Now you might think that David has done this once before. Like the Philistines have come up once before in the exact same place, in the exact same numbers, that they spread out just like they were before. Oh, David's like, oh, I've done this before, I know how to do it, I know what to do. But yet, he doesn't just go off his own decisions, he doesn't just go off his own wisdom and his own strength again. He says, so David inquired of the Lord, and he answered, do not go straight up, but circle around behind them and attack them in front of the balsam trees. As soon as you hear the sound of marching in the tops of the balsam trees, move quickly, because that will mean the Lord has gone out in front of you to strike the Philistine army. So David did as the Lord commanded him, and he struck down the Philistines all the way from Gibeon to Gezer. So the second situation occurs where the same army in the same place is spread out like just before, and you might think, oh, okay, well, just like in our life, and we have a very similar situation that's occurred before, we're like, okay, I know how to do this, I can do it again. But yet David doesn't do it in his own strength, he doesn't do it in his own wisdom. He goes to inquire of the Lord, and actually God gives him a different set of instructions this time. Instead of just saying go straight up like he did the first time, God says, actually no, stop, go and circle around, do something different this time. And it just shows the sensitivity of David's heart. Even the fact in him discerning God's voice in that moment, which is quite a complicated instruction. Nowadays when we're praying and we're seeking God's guidance, it can be hard. It can be hard to discern the voice of God. It can be hard to discern, what's right. And often you might just get an impression of no, or an impression of yes, or an impression of not yet. But it's very kind of simple and basic. But yet somehow, David discerns from God that the answer is don't go straight up, circle around, wait till you hear sound in the tops of the trees, and then go and attack. A very complicated instruction. And yes, God might have spoken more, more obviously in those days to David and to the people in the Old Testament. So I guess that's for granted. But it just shows the sensitivity of David's heart, and it just shows the kind of guy that David is, and why God elected him and appointed him to be king over Israel, because he is a man after God's own heart. He doesn't want to do things in his own strength or by his own wisdom. He's constantly coming before God and saying, God, what should I do? He just constantly wants to serve God, and that's why God favored David so much as a king. So long live the king, long live David, and long live Jesus Christ, who is the one true king. And David is really just a foreshadow, just a taste, just a glimpse of this one true great king whom we are looking forward to. So hopefully that's an encouragement for you guys today, to look forward and to place your hope and your joy in Jesus, our true king. Long may he live. Amen. Right, have a great day, guys. We'll see you tomorrow. Jamie will see you tomorrow in the next chapter. And yeah, stay updated for what we'll be doing regarding coronavirus and lockdown. So God bless you. Take care.